Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progress in Action. Tonight we are welcoming back someone I really enjoyed. I had him, I can't believe it was in March, that long ago. Mr. Conor Kavanagh, otherwise known as the Kavernacle. He has his own show in the UK on politics. So with the vote on Friday, I figured it was pretty important to get his take. I know pretty much all of us love Corbyn here, but it's important to get the opinion from someone on the ground and see from their perspective what's going on. So thank you so much for joining us again, Conor.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I really enjoyed it last time, and it's like you said, it's been so long, and my channel has actually grown a fair bit, and it's been doing well. Kind of thanks to your channel as well, like shouting me out to start with. But yeah, I'm happy to be back, and I enjoyed your audience engaging with me last time, so hopefully I can tell them a lot about British politics when it's so important in the last run up to the election this week.
Yes. I try using the Vote Labour November 12th hashtag like every 5 minutes, just in case. So yeah, I mean the big vote is Friday. We in the States, we're all progressives love Corbyn. He's the British Bernie, essentially. So I can presume you'll be voting for Corbyn then?
It's a bit complicated, so I'll explain it to you. Also, I think the vote's Thursday. I got a bit mixed up as well. I think it's the 12th, right?
Oh, that could be American time that I'm talking about Friday.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, you're right. Right.
So, because Britain is obviously, it's not two-party system, it's a multi-party system. So what is happening at the moment, it's also not just one country, it's not just England, it's obviously Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales as well. So basically what's happening at the moment is if you support someone like Jeremy Corbyn, you're urged to vote anti-Tory. So what we're trying to do at the moment is tactical voting. So if you have a seat where it might be a sort of a free horse race. So for example, you might have the Tory party, Labour and the Lib Dems. What people are saying now is you should vote for the person most likely to beat them rather than taking votes away from each other. So where I live, for example, the seat has existed for over 100 years. Labour have never won. They're never going to win here. So for me, you either pick the Tories or the Lib Dems. Now, I don't want to vote for the Lib Dems. I would like to vote for Labour, and I don't want to be part of the problem of not voting your conscience. But I got to be realistic, and voting for Labour in my seat is just as good as voting for the Conservatives. So I'm going to vote for the Liberal Democrats to hopefully reduce the Conservative. They don't even have a majority at the moment, but if they might get some more seats elsewhere, I don't want to add to that by wasting my vote by voting Labour. So across the country, people are doing that. You might be voting in Scotland for the SNP instead, or you might be voting for Labour instead of the SNP, or all these other different parties. So it's quite frustrating because we don't have a representative democracy. And in terms of the scale of the parties, it really doesn't translate well to the House of Commons. For example, if I was going to say the order by vote is the biggest parties, it'd be Tories, Labour, then something like Brexit Party, Green Party. But how it works in this country in terms of seats, it goes Tories, Labour, SNP, Liberal Democrats, and that is the problem with this voting. But that's why we can't just vote for Corbyn if we like him, because it won't work out that way. It's too divided. So we got to vote for the anti-Tory party, whoever that may be in our region, really.
Wow. Okay, so I shouldn't be really hopeful Corbyn's going to win.
Well, you can be hopeful, but what might be more realistic is a Labour minority government where they don't have the majority, but they might be propped up by another party. So at the moment, the Scottish, I don't want to say it wrong because they're not nationalists. I forgot what it's a different word because a nationalist has a bad connotations. It's the Scottish National Party, not the Nationalist Party, National Party. So they're Scotland's main party. They're pro-independence for Scotland. The leader of them is called Nicola Sturgeon, and she said that she is open to the idea of going into a coalition government with Labour if Corbyn promises that there will be another referendum on Scottish independence. So you have some stuff like that. There's also the Lib Dems, who are very anti-Corbyn, but they've kind of changed their tune a bit lately and focused on being anti-Boris instead. So they're really positioning themselves as an anti-Tory party as well. So you could see something going on with that, but the Lib Dems are more like centrists. Labour now these days is more, left as you get in mainstream politics. So we'll see what happens, but anything can happen. Boris Johnson's had a nightmare today. If there's one story, I want to give you an anecdote of what happened. Because the NHS has been cut so much, a boy had an operation, a 4-year-old boy, and he had to lie on the floor on coats because there wasn't enough beds for him. So Boris Johnson was asked about this by a journalist, and he got his phone and he said, look at the photo of this boy and asked him what he thought of it. Boris Johnson wouldn't answer the question, then snatched the journalist's phone and put it in his pocket and put it in his own pocket. So the Prime Minister took a journalist's phone and put it in his pocket because he was showing him a photo of a boy who had to lie on the floor because there wasn't enough NHS beds, and he's like hooked up to like a drip and stuff. So that's like the state of our politics, and this was just today, and there's been loads of things happening lately. So you're not wrong for thinking Corbyn could win, and there's lots of young people now who the polls don't really take into account. So 2016 was the Brexit referendum, and then 2017 was the last election, and that's over 2 years ago. So there's lots of new young people who probably will be more inclined to vote Labour. And I saw a good statistic across the UK, if it was only like 18 to 25-year-olds, the Conservatives wouldn't win a single seat. So if we get young people to vote, then there is a chance. But I think there is some momentum now, especially with all these things happening with Boris. But it's impossible to tell, really. It's just really, you can't predict it. It's like 2016 in America. You can't really predict it.
And you made a statement that was very on point before we went live, that Boris Johnson winning would help Trump.
Yeah, and I want to get into the broader point of Trumpism, but I don't know if you want to talk about this now. The NHS is a big thing with Trump. So
yes.
Yeah, okay. So because of my new job, I'm actually a journalist who covers the pharmaceutical industry, so I've been exposed to this whole thing a lot more. So basically what the Tories are saying is that Boris Johnson does not want to privatise the NHS. He doesn't want to sell it to America because he's not going to literally sell it to the American government. That's their argument. Because he's not literally going to sell it to the American government, he's not selling it off to America. But what is happening is the Americans are pressuring Boris Johnson and before Theresa May to get a hard Brexit. That means there'll be less regulations on drug prices from our agreements with the European Union. So the US think because they make all these drugs, Britain needs to pay more for innovation, or American innovation. We're freeloading off America. So what they're saying is you should pay more for drugs. Now, that doesn't sound so bad on the surface, but what actually is going to happen is either your tax bill is going to go up because the NHS is going to have to pay way more money for these drugs, and what will happen then is it's going to strengthen the Tories' arguments like, we got to privatise it, it's unsustainable, we can't do this anymore. And then that will really play with the mainstream, I think. And that's how they're sort of selling them off to the US. And the US has also said, we want you to liberalise the NHS. We want you to privatise it. So if the Tories privatise it even more room for US companies to come in, more room for the US drugs to come in at a high cost. And, it's really a bit of a nightmare. And it's essentially selling off the NHS to America without literally saying, US government, take control of the NHS. It's more insidious because, as you know, American government and corporations, there's not too much difference between them. We've had people in our government meet with the head of like Pfizer and all these other drug companies to talk about raising drug prices, talk about liberalising the NHS. So that's the problem. And that's why Trump, Boris, that's why they're so, they like each other, from the same sort of, not the same class, but obviously very wealthy men. And then just to bring us all back around, what I was saying to you before we started was what I'm really afraid of if Boris wins is in this country legitimising Trumpism. And to me, it might mean something different to you. Trumpism to me means just constant lying, the complete rejection of reality. And when your leader does that, the whole party gets on board to help you perpetrate these lies, and it just spreads everywhere. And now the media in this country is complicit, just as the corporate media in America was complicit in Trump's election, just giving him a platform to spew all this stuff, not really fact-checking him properly. That is what's happening here. Boris Johnson goes on TV, lies every single day, lies about Labour, lies about the things he's going to promise to do. He's not selling off the NHS, but then Corbyn reveals all these documents that show they're in talks with US corporations about liberalising the NHS. And then he says there's going to be free trade between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Nothing's really going to change there. And then another leaked document shows there probably is going to be massive changes there. So the Northern Irish aren't supporting Boris anymore. There's lots of things like that. And then I was talking to you before, the BBC has just been broadcasting his lies so much, and they've actually been helping him. So, for example, you have, I think, Veterans Day on the 11th of November in America. I think it's Veterans Day. So we have Remembrance Day, which is to remember the armistice in World War One. So there was a video that went out on BBC News. It was Boris Johnson laying the wreath. Looked all perfectly fine. But then some people realised, hang on a second, why is Theresa May there? Why is that old leader of the Liberals there? It turns out it was a clip from 2016, because in 2019, Boris had messed it all up and he'd laid the wreath upside down. So that was the first case, right? So that's this fake news that the BBC is peddling. So one case, whatever, I'll give them a pass. Second time, a woman in an audience, it's something called Question Time. It's where audience ask politicians questions and stuff on the BBC. She asked Boris Johnson a question and everyone laughed at him because she really exposed him. BBC published the footage later. The editing has been edited out of it. There's no the laughter has been edited out, so it changes the context of the clip completely. Everyone's just clapping in their clip. So again, Trumpism, it's like distorting reality. And then they go on another time. They put him just eating a scone or a scone, which is just like this British cake thing. I don't know if you have them in America as well.
Yeah.
And So they just published that on their page, no context essentially. And then playing into BBC again, I said lately that the chief political correspondent for the BBC said that the Tory health minister, was punched in the face by a Labour activist, tweeted it as a fact. Turns out it wasn't real as well. And then one more thing, I don't know if you saw Ben Shapiro get owned by that BBC journalist.
Yes.
Right, he's called Andrew Neil, and he's a conservative, right? But he's ruthless. So the BBC told Jeremy Corbyn, all the leaders of the party, they've signed up for an interview with Andrew Neil, and Corbyn's probably thinking, this guy is a really hard interview. I'm probably going to get slated a bit, but at least Boris Johnson's going on. We know how he'll get him. Well, it turns out Boris Johnson didn't actually agree, but they told Jeremy Corbyn that he did. So he went on that, got destroyed by this guy, and then he thought, Boris Johnson will get the same treatment. Boris Johnson never went on. And that's just this Trumpism I'm talking about. And the BBC is complicit. And when you have the BBC doing this, it's like, that thing people say, people in America think Fox News is news because it has news in the title. So they're like, the TV told me this, the news told me this. It's even worse when the impartial broadcaster, funded by the taxpayer, is broadcasting outright lies. Not only broadcasting lies, it's editing things out and changing things to make the Prime Minister look even better. The impartial BBC. So that's what I'm so scared of. It's like reality, and I think social media has a big part to play in it, is like being distorted in front of me to help the Conservatives win another election. And it's so frustrating. And then the icing on the cake, Boris Johnson turned around today and he talked about privatising the BBC. So a nice slap in the face for all the people in the BBC who'd been shilling for him for the last couple of months. That's a bit of poetic justice for them, showing that you can't trust people like that. So, yeah, it feels like I'm in America this election because it's just insanity what the media is doing. And of course, I don't need to tell you, everyone who owns a newspaper, who starts a news channel, they're billionaires with an agenda who want to promote an agenda. So obviously all the mainstream corporate media are in it for the Tories, and they'll demonise Corbyn every step of the way. Sorry, I talked a bit too long, but that is just a general gist of what I feel is Trumpism really taking hold in the UK, and it's really, really scary to see. Because I always thought there was a level that we wouldn't go to. When I look at America, I'm like, I'm glad we don't get to that far, but then I feel like we definitely are getting there now, which is really depressing.
Wow. And that's crazy as an American, because so much in 2016, we relied on the BBC to give us news because our news sucks. MSM is, most of us haven't watched it in a good 3 years. Which is why our jobs are so important, because we actually say things that are true. He's so cute. There's a comment that's agreed.
Well, thank you.
That's one of the good things about having him on. But yeah, one of the things I also wanted to talk about was what is with all of the media over there and articles and everything just saying Jezza is anti-Semitic.
Yeah. So it was funny. I was watching a video I made before I spoke to you last time about all of this. So I'm gonna. I don't know how much you want me to go into it. I can break it down quite a lot if you want.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't need to explain to a lot of your audience or at all that Palestinians and the cause of the Palestinians is a very hot topic with leftist circles, for example, right? And what often happens sometimes in the criticism of Israel, anti-Semitic tropes do get used. So, for example, it's not anti-Semitic to say that the Israeli lobby has a big influence on American politics, has a big influence on the British politics. It is kind of anti-Semitic to say that they control everyone through money. It's like an old Jewish, stereotype of what they're controlling the world through their money, essentially. And what starts to happen is people do start to buy into those stereotypes, saying all this stuff, and there are problems there. There's a guy called Ken Livingstone who used to be the mayor of London. He said that Hitler was a Zionist. Really insensitive, not true, and just why would you say it? I don't really appreciate stuff like that, and in my opinion, stuff like that is anti-Semitic, and he is friends with Corbyn, right? And that is problematic to an extent. And then because the Labour Party, like the Democrats in some ways, it's very diverse, and it pretty much if you're Muslim in this country, you pretty much are going to vote for the Labour Party. There are some Muslims in the Conservative Party, but obviously in the Islamic world, it's an even more hot issue. It's historically been a hot issue, and then a lot of the times in these communities, if you immigrate over here, there aren't laws against anti-Semitism in Middle Eastern countries. You can say what you want about Jews, and if you read historically either Hamas propaganda or even the words of President Nasser, who used to be the president of Egypt, talking about exterminating all Israelis, it's obviously going to have a knock-on effect. I was reading a book lately that said Israelis during things like the Six-Day War, they generally thought the Arabs were going to do a Holocaust against them because of the language they were using. So that kind of has a knock-on effect. And a Labour MP called Naz Shah said that, if the Israelis love America so much, why don't we move all of the Israelis over to America? And I know to some people that I don't understand. I can understand the sort of logic, but that is, of course, calling for ethnic cleansing. I know
sure.
it's not killing people, but you're literally saying, let's remove all of these people. And of course, there is a significant chunk of Israelis who've lived there for generations. It's the original homeland of the Jews. So that is how there is anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. So I'm going to keep it real. There are elements that do repeat some anti-Semitic tropes, but it's different from right-wing anti-Semitism. It's all revolving around Israel-Palestine, whereas right-wing anti-Semitism is all about seeing Jews as like these puppet masters, seeing them as like controlling the world for their own benefit. The Jews did World War One. The Jews create all these wars for their own benefit. That's what the right-wing believe, and that is rife in the Tory party, and that's the sort of difference. Now, Jeremy Corbyn is, of course, not an anti-Semite. I don't really need to even... To some level-headed people, you don't even need to even tell you that. An anti-racist throughout his whole life, someone who protested apartheid, has pretty much always been on the right side of history. He doesn't hate Jews. He doesn't repeat anti-Semitic stereotypes about Jews. You can't find anything he said because a guy like that does not say it. The problem is he might sometimes mix with people who do say problematic things. But when you are advocating for the Palestinian cause, it's kind of hard. I think there was some march he went on, and there was some Iranian activists, and obviously Iran is one of his other countries that has a super problematic history with Israel. And then one of them had wrote a book that was anti-Semitic, and they're saying Corbyn endorsed that. Of course he doesn't. You can't check everyone you mix with at these events, but that's the problem. And it has worked because the mainstream press are like anti-Semite. If people are saying the Jews better leave the UK if he comes in because he's going to, I don't know, purge them or hurt them. And it's really ridiculous to think this. A guy who's for equality for all apparently hates Jews. And the big point is, if he was actually anti-Semitic, why do so many Jews support him? Why are there Jews for Jeremy Corbyn? Why do rabbis support him? And I know a lot of them don't, but there is a point to be made that a lot of them don't like him because he criticises Israel in terms of the general right-wing press. I'm not talking about the Jews here. I'm talking about the general right-wing press, because Israel is a massive ally to this country, or no, not to this country, but I wouldn't say they've done much good for us, but in terms of they're our big ally on the world stage. So that is why they smear him. And that's why someone like Boris Johnson, who's actually a racist, can go and shout at him, calling him an anti-Semite, and everyone just gets on at him all the time. And make no mistake, if Bernie wasn't a Jew, they would say the exact same thing about him. There is not much difference the way Bernie talks about Israel and the way Corbyn talks about Israel. I just think Bernie is a tiny bit more pro-Israeli. I wouldn't say he's pro, because he called Netanyahu a racist. I'm not saying Bernie's a pro-Israeli, but at the same time, they're very similar. Ilhan Omar is another one, very similar. And of course, look at the difference. Ilhan Omar and Corbyn, anti-Semites. Bernie isn't. But of course, you hear this other one, that Bernie is a self-hating Jew because he doesn't unequivocally support the Israeli government. So that is really, really the heart of it. Just if you want a really short version, think of Ilhan Omar. Think of how Chelsea Clinton, Nancy Pelosi all jumped down her throat calling her anti-Semite. That is pretty much the same with Corbyn. And that's pretty much all you need to know. I've explained it in more detail, but if you want to repeat it to someone, just explain the Ilhan Omar stuff, and that's pretty much the gist of it.
Wow. That's kind of what I was thinking, but that's, oh my God. Yeah, we do hear that a lot, that Bernie is a self-hating Jew.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Oh my God,
and that is also extremely anti-Semitic, because it's like all Jews must be loyal to the Israeli state. And then Trump went on stage, the same guy who's been calling these people anti-Semites on Twitter, he said that these Jews are disloyal to Israel as well, and we should love Israel more. That is so much more anti-Semitic than anything Ilhan Omar or Jeremy Corbyn have said. Even the mistakes people like Ilhan Omar have made in the past, what Trump says there is way more anti-Semitic, and that's why it's so funny. And the broader point, right-wing Christians are historically the tormentors of Jewish communities throughout history, especially in Europe. They've kicked them out of England, Spain, France, oftentimes brutally. And it's funny they're spinning a conversation where left-wing people, and let's not forget, there were a lot of Jews in the original socialist movements in Europe, and that's what the Nazis crushed them for. They said, Jews are communists. Communists are just the brainchild of the Jews to take over the whole world. We're going to crush them together. That's what the Nazis did. So let's not pretend the right-wing and right-wing Christians care about anti-Semitism. They don't. They've benefited it throughout history and used, anti-leftism and anti-Judaism as really one thing to crush both these groups. So yeah, it's another thing just watching these people call Corbyn anti-Semite. It's just so frustrating, but people buy it all the time. It's so, he's probably one of the most smeared politicians I've ever seen, because it gets personal. It hasn't got personal with Bernie yet. It will if he gets close to becoming president. But with Corbyn, it's been personal since day one. It's not just about his policies. It's about him being a so-called bad person, which is just frustrating to see, because he's pretty much a harmless old grandpa in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's why when people go for the jugular with Bernie, I'm like, oh my God, he wants to help save humanity, like that evil monster.
I think you got to be a special kind of psycho to like passionately hate Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn. I just don't get it. Like, even if you don't agree with their politics, I don't understand when you look at who they are as humans and what they've been like for their whole lives. I don't know what would make you so angry. It's very strange. There's loads of reasons why, but just in the personal level, I don't understand what gets them so riled up.
I think they maybe hate themselves, and they're just jealous that like they'll never be as amazing as a person as they are.
Yeah, I think that could come into it, because obviously they've inspired. Because I would say the thing is, Jeremy Corbyn is very unpopular in this country because of the smears. He's also really popular as well, because what happens normally, you normally get someone like Theresa May as a politician. Just everyone hates her. No one has a positive opinion of her, even if you are sort of neutral. But people like Bernie and Corbyn, and even like Trump and Boris to some extent, people really do hate them. But there's a lot of people who really do like them as well. And I think that is a benefit for people like that, because they have these sort of supporters, and people like you and me, who will really help spread their message, even if they are being smeared so much. And because of, I'm talking about social media being the heart of the problems, but it's good because social media allows you to get around the smears and really get to the heart of these issues and actually educate people and go past the billionaires' control on information, which is obviously a really good thing. There are problems with social media, like Cambridge Analytica helping sway the election for Trump, but at the same time, it has been a good thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say when I get discouraged and people come at me with like hate and everything, like we have so many more supporters than
Yeah,
haters
yeah, yeah.
easily. Um, what is, do you feel like at least where you live, do you feel like you guys do support Bernie as a whole?
Yeah, it's a really strange one that people will support Bernie Sanders but not support Corbyn. It's sort of like the those like white soccer mum liberals who loved AOC but hated Bernie. Do you know what I mean? It's this weird thing that they don't, because for example, it's pretty easy to get on board with universal healthcare when you come from Europe, right? So they see
Sure.
Bernie saying that, and it's like this guy makes sense, and maybe he's talking about America doesn't need to spend so much money on war. Yeah, we all know America is is the biggest military power. That makes sense as well. So in that context, it's easy to think Bernie is just this really rational guy. He's not as crazy as everyone makes out. But if you follow Bernie's career, the only reason he doesn't call himself an actual socialist is because it just doesn't fly in American politics. Because if you actually watch some of his old stuff, he's talking about his positive opinion of the Cuban Revolution and stuff. So he in my opinion is his brother is in the Green Party. The Green Party is the most left party in the country in the UK. Bernie's brother. And I believe Bernie and his brother are probably very similar in their politics. I think Bernie is way more like Corbyn when you think, but because of American politics, he can't be like Corbyn because you're not going to get elected. It's amazing he might even get elected acting as he is, but it's because America's problems are so bad, what he's saying does come across as common sense. Whereas to Corbyn, they like to say, oh, it's like a fairyland. He's talking about like free broadband, universal basic income, but not the Andrew Yang way, like a different way. Talking about, some people said 4-day work weeks and stuff. That's not the stage you're at in America to really have that discussion when you don't even have universal healthcare. But I guess that's why people in England are genuinely more sympathetic to Bernie, even if they don't like Corbyn. It's a weird thing, but like I'm saying, it's because Bernie's positions are rational in the context of the UK, even though they're seen as really radical in the US, which is still crazy to me. But there you go.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Does how is the UK dealing with climate change? Do you have a lot of activists? Who is the best candidate on the climate?
Yeah, so the UK is good on climate change, and that's one thing Tories keep saying. We're good on climate change. We've run multiple times a whole day on green energy and stuff. So we've done that a lot. We are one of the best countries. I think we're actually one of the best countries in the world for green energy and stuff. But we have had massive protests. I don't know if you've heard about the Extinction Rebellion. So
Yes.
basically, the civil disobedience, they literally shut down like roads around London for days. It was really good to see, mainly to draw attention to we're not doing enough. Even if we are doing stuff, we're not doing enough. And a lot of climate activists have said Jeremy Corbyn's policies really offer the best solution on climate change. And he's adopted the language of AOC. He's talked about Green New Deal and stuff, just like AOC did. So in terms of Jeremy Corbyn, yeah, I'd say he's the best at. Everyone is pretty good in terms of if you took them to the UK of the US, they'd probably be seen as radicals. But at the same time, we know, the Tories aren't going to do as much as people who care about these things. They're not passionate about these things, but they've been okay on them. I wouldn't trust them to get to the point we need to get, but it's and the US is more important because you're one of the biggest polluters. The UK isn't, so it's really down to the US and China to get their act together more than the other countries. And as China is way more of a polluter, but at least it's actually trying a lot of green technology. The US has seemingly stalled on that in favor of getting the what's the word, like wringing the last bits of money out of the coal industry, for example, or just continuing the fossil fuel industry. So yeah, the UK is way better than America, but yeah, Labour offers the best solution for improvement in like green energy and other things like that.
And how is it in the UK as far as big money in politics?
Yeah, I like talking about this because on the surface, big big money in politics isn't as big a deal as the US, but I always say to people it's more insidious. It's more when you think about like rich men in shady rooms. That's more the UK than the US. US is like you can bribe whoever you want and do it publicly. No one cares if you brainwash your electorate enough. But so, for example, it's like Theresa May's husband owns stocks in the company that built the missiles that she bombed Syria with. Obviously, that's super corrupt. He's making money off that. Obviously, Boris Johnson is in bed with all the richest in the country. He bragged about being one of the only people to defend the bankers after 2008. Obviously, Murdoch and everyone like that likes Johnson as well. But it's a lot more behind the scenes. It's, they're in bed with drug companies, Amazon, but it's more like the revolving door in America. You don't see it, you don't really hear about it, but what you don't have in America, what we have here, is the elite in this country. They all go to the same school. But it's not just they all go to the same school. They've all been going to the same school for the last 1,000 years. That's the difference in this country. The Tories are literally the party formed from the landed aristocracy that has literally been in control of this country since its founding. I don't know when you'd say its modern founding is, maybe 1066 with the Norman invasion, maybe 1215 with the Magna Carta, if you want to go in sort of our state being founded. But yeah, so that's the problem. They all know each other. You're going to go to school, if you're a Tory politician, you've probably been to school with everyone who's in a top job at all these other places. You probably personally know a lot of these people. Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, and David Cameron all knew each other as 20-year-olds. And then they all got in the government together. Can you imagine getting into the government, top position governments with two of your mates, and you know loads of other people there already, and you're controlling the country? You've known each other since you went to like Eton and Oxbridge and everything. That's the disgusting corruption in this country. Where in the US, you don't even need that. Just literally, I'll pay you however much, and you say what I want. And because we're seen as people, because there's really no limit to how much I can give you with a super PAC, I'll keep funding your account. And then there might be a nice consulting job waiting for you when you're out of politics. It's so much more brazen. Where the UK is a bit more hush-hush. You know someone, you're married to someone who controls a paper, you're married to someone who owns a company. It's more like that. And that's the problem, is because you don't see it. And I wish maybe I don't wish it was as bad as the US, but I wish there was a easier way to get a spotlight on it, because there just isn't. You guys are a bit lucky, because now Bernie is really pushing to get rid of all of it, because you can see it so plainly. But with us, we can't see it. And if your media is controlled by the same people who swim in these circles, you're never going to see it. So, and most people don't care, because you can't make a big issue of it, because corporations of people sounds ridiculous. That's a good thing to rally people around. And then when you see how backwards you are in terms of like healthcare and everything, it's easy to see the corruption. But in the UK, it's so much different, which is really depressing. And I don't think people are going to wake up quick enough, really, to see what it's like. And sometimes I just say to myself, you convince yourself the world is better because of democracy. When the same people who were controlling everyone when they were like peasant farmers still control you today, I don't think it's got much better. They've never let go of power. And nearly every single one of our prime ministers has gone to Eton, which is just this really, really posh school where they all go. And then David Cameron's another one. Boris Johnson, I'm not sure if he went to Eton exactly. I'm pretty sure he did, but they all go to Oxbridge as well. So, yeah, it's depressing. Imagine I think there's one school in America where they all go. It's like the Freemason thing. It's like they're all in that club. I forgot what it is exactly. But, yeah, it's just so much worse in this country for that stuff.
Yeah, I admit, like so many people in the US, I had no idea about so much, corporate money in politics until early. I had no flipping idea. How is Corbin? Do you guys have access to, like, we have a few websites where you can look up every single donation, who it's from. Can you guys do that? Do you have websites, and has Corbin taken any?
Well, we obviously have websites, but because I think the corruption, like, for example, we can see that Russian oligarchs have funded the Tory campaign. That's like pretty public information. But then there's other instances you just can't see it, because it's not always a donation. It's like an agreement or a promise or stuff like that. It's really old school corruption rather than like the American style. I'm not even going to try and be subtle. So Boris Johnson said, obviously, the Tories are in the pay of the bankers, of the wealthy, and he's talking about reforming the press and investigating all these things. So he does that, but like I'm saying, the problem is we can't see that stuff because it doesn't exist. That I think they're just a bit more. I think in everything, the right wing in this country are more insidious, and they're more smart because they have to be smarter. in the US, you don't have to be smart. When you got propaganda pumping out to everyone in the country, you brainwash tens of millions of people to vote for you no matter what. Why do you need to be subtle? And the UK is a bit different because if they get caught, then it pretty much shows you for what they are. And I think if Boris Johnson was found to be taking like millions of dollars from some shady company or whatever, he would be done. I hope we haven't got to the point where he'd be let off the hook, but I'm really not sure anymore.
And let's say Thursday, worst case scenario, Boris wins. Then what? Do you guys have yellow vest movement planned? Like what happens?
Yeah, the thing is, if Boris wins the majority, I don't think he will. But if he does, we're seriously screwed because then he gets to control Brexit. He gets to control the laws after Brexit, depending on what Brexit he gets. And the only thing I can hope is that it's a Trump situation where hopefully what comes out of that later, like 10 years' time, 5 years' time, is the complete destruction of that party because they would have screwed us so hard. Because if he does what he wants with Brexit, I know people think they want it. Obviously, it's brainwashed people, but it's going to destroy this country. I also write about immigration, freelance for some immigration lawyers, and literally, Brexit does not benefit the UK in any single way, and the way he wants to do it is even more damaging. So, if he gets to do that, it's going to make the UK more like the US. But I hope what it will do is inspire, like Bernie has. Like AOC would not exist without Donald Trump getting elected. Do you know what I mean? Her and Ilhan Omar would not be there without Donald Trump. And you see on her Reddit account before, she was canvassing for Bernie, organising for Bernie. He inspired all these people. So I'm hoping, even if Corbyn has to resign, which I think he will if he loses so bad, I'm hoping he'll inspire the next generation of people to run. And hopefully we won't go back to New Labour, like the centrist New Labour, because that's not the way to win. Not in these economic times. You can't win on a centrist platform. People are just sick of it. They want a change. That's why Brexit sort of happened in the first place. That's why Trump happened in the first place as well. So, worst case scenario, seriously screwed if he gets a majority. I'm not exaggerating there. We're going to become like Little America if Trump. I'm even calling him Trump at the moment. If Boris gets his way.
Same difference. So what do your friends and everyone think about how we already had 14 people drop out of the presidential Dem race, and we still have 15? What do you think of that? One party, 29 people.
Well, yeah, to be honest, British people don't really pay attention to what's going on in politics that intimately. I know some of my subscribers do who are British, but obviously, if you're asking me personally, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I can kind of understand some of these people are relevant, trying to get their name out there. But some of them, I'm like, how the hell do you think you're going to win? Like, Beto O'Rourke, and I bet you last time, I said Andrew Yang would be in the race longer than Beto O'Rourke. I said Beto would drop out before Yang. Because what my point was, Yang has got something unique, and he's done pretty well considering no one knew he was before. Beto O'Rourke, everyone knew who he was, but he just completely flopped because what does he offer that no one, someone else doesn't do better? Bernie literally
skateboards.
Yeah, he skateboards and stands on tables and shouts like a madman. And then loads of other people like Kamala Harris. She really just reminded me of Hillary Clinton in many ways, even the way she spoke. Cory Booker, like, what are you doing in there? Julian Castro. It's like, why? Bernie is just, you can tell he's more popular. He's taken your ideas to a better conclusion, and he's made it easier to understand. So, in my opinion, it should just be Biden. Not that he should be running just because whatever he's famous. Biden, Warren, and Bernie. That should be it. Mayor Pete. I don't know what the hell is going on with that. I don't know how he's getting popular. I hope it's just like some fake polling, because he's skating by because I don't really like to say this, but because he's gay, it makes him seem more liberal than he is. Because if he was a straight normal man. Sorry, I said that. That's not the right language. Straight. Because normal was most people are straight. If he was a straight man, served in the military, talking about how Christian he is, and then talking about what was that thing he asked today? Billionaires. Oh, wasn't that child who said, "Will you let me see your donations" or something? He was like, "No."
Right.
He's like, "Would you not accept billionaires' donations?" Come on, if that was just run of the mill standard politician, like dragged, like I just created this guy, it'd be like a Republican. But because he's a gay man as well, he's got this sort of young gay man. Isn't that the president of the 21st century? We haven't had that before. And I'm all for him doing well in terms of that, but his policies suck, and he's just not going to help people enough. And if you're a gay man and you're giving speeches to the Tea Party talking about how great they are 10 years ago, I've got a question if you'll even be the best choice for your community you come from. It reminds me like Dave Rubin. Just you're selling out for politics. Dave Rubin going on saying to Donald Trump Jr., "You can call me FAG and I won't care." It's like same with Pete going to the Tea Party and saying all this stuff. So yeah, that's a bit depressing. Elizabeth Warren, I don't get why people think she's a good replacement for Bernie. She's good if Bernie isn't there, but someone who claps Trump for saying socialism will never win in America, someone who says she's a capitalist to her bones, I think that's the problem with me with Elizabeth Warren, because capitalism in general is an exploitative system where the people who control the economy, like the Tories in our country, they see you as a cog to make them money. In this country, they're trying to raise the retirement age to 75. So what? You just work all your life and then die. You don't even get to have your government pension. And Elizabeth Warren saying she wants that system to her bones because she might have deluded herself thinking capitalism looks like the mixture that you see in Scandinavia between socialism and capitalism. But that's not what it is. That's socialism eating away at what capitalism fundamentally is, an economic system designed where you can just make maximum profit forever. And that is what's literally destroying the world in terms of climate change at the moment. It's because why would these people don't care about the future? It's like, how can I get as rich as possible, as quick as possible? And how can I get that rich forever and ever until there's no more money to be made, which there is always more money to be made. So that Elizabeth Warren doesn't get it if she's saying I'm capitalist to my bones, because that is just not working these days, because it means you don't recognize the inherent flaw with society. It's not a fault of society that it's like this right now. And America's a very bad example. That's how it's designed. Healthcare being as bad as it is in America, that's capitalism, and that's how it's designed. If she's saying she's a capitalist to her bones, she should agree with that system. Because if she's advocating for Medicare for all and NHS, that's socialism, and that's a socialist-style healthcare system. It's not a capitalist one. So for me, she doesn't get it. Maybe a far-off second choice, because Biden is just an awful old-school Republican racist. So
yeah, and Pete is a total racist as well, and he has bloodlust, which terrifies me because he really loves his military.
Well, I think that there's good examples of. I think it's people like Hillary Clinton and Margaret Thatcher are good examples of women who've had to act like men because they've had to prove themselves in a man's world, and you often get it a lot of the times. I think Obama's a good example, right? People are like, will he be a president for all Americans? I was reading some old articles. I was like, people used to say this. Will he be a president for all Americans because he's black? Or will he just be a president for black Americans? It's like, are you crazy? But with that in mind, he couldn't, or I feel a bit sorry for him because I know we like to say Obama sold out, but he couldn't use his race as much as he wanted. There were these moments where he would talk about being a black man and knowing what it is like, but he couldn't because the Republicans just be like, you're not a president for all Americans. And then I think in some instance, he felt he had to prove himself. I'm going to be well-rounded. I'm not going to be too outspoken because I'm not going to rock the boat too much in the end because I'm not going to stay in power. And I think people like Pete are a bit the same. It's like, yes, I'm a gay man. Isn't that scary and new for many of you? I might be the first gay president. Don't worry though. I served in the military and killed poor Central Asian peasants, and I'm also really tough on black people, and I fired a black police chief for exposing racism in the police force. And I'm also really Christian, so I'm actually not that much different. I'm just, and maybe you can even say you support gay rights by supporting me and how authoritarian I am. So that's my problem with people like that. And I know people might say it's not my place to say these things as a straight white guy, but I'm just going to say it how it is, because it makes it. I'm not sure. The Humanist Report. He said some stuff quite similar. He's kind of influenced my way of thinking on this, but it's just I got no time for people who are from communities or groups who've been constantly discriminated against and marginalised, selling out to those groups to get political power, whether that's women, whether that's gay people, whether that's minorities. I literally got no time for it because it makes me sick. Not that I've got a good understanding of this, but as someone from an Irish background, someone whose family, then they came to this country, were discriminated against. If you go then and if I went and sold out and became a Tory politician, the people who were demonising people, like my grandmother and everything, what does that say about me? I'm just in it for the power. I'm not in it to make people's lives a better place. And that's my problem. I might not have phrased it as well as I would have liked. And maybe, if gay people watch this might think it's a bit too controversial. But, that I'm just keeping it real. That's my opinion on it. And it makes me mad because someone like Bernie, he doesn't need to be a gay guy to be a really good person on gay rights. I've read stuff from him in the 70s and he's advocating for gay rights. People like Hillary Clinton were going mental about like AIDS and stuff in the 90s. So you don't have to be from a marginalised community to be a better ally to them than people who are from that group but have sold out, like Dave Rubin and like Pete Buttigieg as well. So yeah, that in terms of the race, I just think too many arrogant people and too many people wanting to get famous and get a nice job afterwards. And in terms of my general opinion, Bernie is just it's just objective fact. It's not my left-leaning politics. He's got the best ideas to address these problems, and I can say, British people view Bernie as rational because you're so far behind. And people like Pete, it's crazy to me. I said this on your show last time. 1948 is when Britain got the NHS, and you're still debating in the leftist party in America whether it's a good idea or not. In 2019, what we're going to get to 2040, you're going to still be debating it. It's actually so frustrating to see. But I don't have a high and mighty attitude about it anymore when the Tories are trying to sell off the NHS. So
yeah, you said it was 1948 when you guys founded it. Oh my God. Yeah, we're like really far behind. Oh my God. That's infuriating.
Yeah, it's just.
Did you see the video that Bernie posted a few days ago where he went up to people, and I think Jordan Sheridan went up to people and was like, how much do you think the average cost is if a person in the U.S. has to go in to give birth and things like that? And people were like, $100, and they're like 13,000, and they couldn't believe it. It was just such a prime example of how people who have this cannot fathom. I remember, I think you sprained your ankle or something.
No, I'll show you guys quick. So I broke my nose. It looks all right now, and I cut my head open. So I'll just tell you a story quick. I was just playing football, and I hit my head on the post, and somehow I broke my nose as well. So what happened? I got stretchered out, ambulance ride, hospital, got my stitches done. Really, really hurt. That was the worst pain I've ever had. Then 2 weeks later, I got my operation, and they fixed my nose. They showed me what the bill would be, about £5,000, £7,000. Obviously, I didn't pay anything, but that's the thing, because I might have had a head injury. You don't know. I didn't have the option. People weren't like, "Are you right? Maybe you go to hospital." It's like I literally cut my head there. I could have really done some damage, and then I had to go. And it, I wasn't in full-time work then. I am now, but even I am full-time. I couldn't afford £7,000 for no reason, and I understand why people in America choose not to go to hospital even if the injuries are really bad, because where are you getting that money from? And I'm not sure exactly how they handle debt. I'm pretty sure they're not too forgiving. I'm not sure that they're probably going to. I'd assume that they're probably going to take away your belongings and your possessions if you can't pay it back. If people are so desperate, I read something about a woman's skin being ripped off by a train, and she's begging people not to take her to the hospital because she doesn't have any money. And isn't that just a sick system? And how can you defend that? And that's why people like Pete Biden are particularly insidious, because they know this is a thing, and they're still trying to muddy the waters, and they're really hurting it ever happening. And whether they believe it or not, I don't really care. If they believe it, they're idiots. And that leaves the only other option is that they're being paid to say these things by the pharmaceutical industry, by all these lobbies, and that is so problematic because there's a bit of like gallows humor in America, like I'm so broke I can't afford this and that. But it's not a joke. If you accidentally hurt yourself, you've got to make a choice whether you're going to go into loads of debt for inflated prices. It doesn't cost $2,000 or $4,000 to get an ambulance ride for 20 minutes, and that's going to put you in debt, maybe crippling debt, and maybe what would that lead to? Poverty, maybe homelessness, and maybe death. So you might if you have something like cancer, if you have a really bad illness and you just can't afford it, what are you meant to do? And that's why it's particularly sick. And that's why, bring it back to Elizabeth Warren, if you're a capitalist, I don't see why you'd have a problem with this system. Like they say, shop around for the best healthcare. In capitalism, they should all be competing with each other. So they'll lower the costs and you can get a nice mix. What you can afford versus some quality care. But we all know that's not how it works. And you can't shop around for a hospital if you're like me and broke your nose and cut your head open. You just go into the nearest one. You ain't got a choice. And you can't, because you're not going to go home and bleed out on the sofa or maybe have brain damage and stuff. So, yeah, so grateful for it. And that's why the Tories can't win, because, I can't, like many people, you can't afford £7,000, just randomly, £7,000 to fix my nose. What, I'm just going to go around with a nose like that forever? So, yeah,
Oh my God.
It's sick that Democrats would even suggest it's not the right policy, and it's sick that I'm talking about a broken nose and the cut head maybe could have been worse and everything, but at the end of the day, that probably not life threatening. But they've heard people like that person from Knock Down the House whose daughter died because they didn't have the right insurance.
Amy Balella.
I think you've interviewed her. Yeah. And that's just one story should be enough, don't you think? But it's 30,000 people a year that happens to, and if your country is sick, if your left party is not endorsing universal healthcare, so yeah, that's my opinion on all of it. But yeah, it's frustrating to see. But I'm just saying, I try not to get as angry anymore because I'm seeing the same sickness come back in my country, and this Trumpism and this really awful version of there's different versions of capitalism. This awful version of capitalism where not even basic stuff like taking care of your health is going to be covered by your taxes, but like they always say, plenty of money for war in all the time, especially in America's case. You don't spend anywhere near as much on anything else but war and arms and everything, and that's how sick the country is. And in my opinion, you bring it all back, it's the sickness of the economic system we live under. And it's not just you guys, it's us as well.
Absolutely. When somebody says, oh my God, that story breaks my heart, does it? Because the candidate you're endorsing doesn't support giving them the help they need. Yeah. So it's either pandering, or it's naivety, or it's just complete shilling for corporations.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it's so important that, people like you are so analytical and you read into these things, because people count on independent journalists to actually do that. Because it's hard for some people to pick up on the cues. If there's, what would you want to leave with our audience today? What do you want them to take away?
So I've been thinking about this a lot. So I think the main problem in the US and the UK is that we're not economically literate. So we associate capitalism with freedom, and that is obviously not right. So even so, just for an example, for many of your audience, might be like this: you work a 40-hour job. Maybe you have a house, you have your mortgage, you have your bills to pay. Absolutely hate your job. Your boss treats you like rubbish. You feel exploited every day, and he probably is making more money off your work than what he pays you. And you can't. And in America, especially, you also have your health insurance wrapped up in this company. So where is the freedom? Can you leave this job? No. because you might go homeless, you lose your healthcare, and then if something happens to you, you could easily die. So where is the freedom in that? And you can say that the free market, you can bring a product to the market, but you don't have any money to start with. Are you really going to compete with anyone? So let's keep it real. And that's what I want people, if you're not as informed on the economic side, I think it's so important, because it's what being educated in Western society, like the US and the UK, you're taught capitalism, freedom, communism, evil, Stalin, all this stuff. Most of the things you have to be thankful for, like the weekend, like minimum wage, like not your boss has not been able to totally exploit you, is because people pushed back against the economic system. There's no one in history who has fought for working people who was a conservative or a capitalist. They did not believe in that stuff, because if they did, they would be with the elite. People like the Republicans and the Tories, history's not going to be kind to them. They're kind to the people who actually fight for working class people. So in this country, Keir Hardie, who's a trade unionist miner who started the Labour Party, what would have people said about him at the time? The same things they say about Bernie and Jeremy Corbyn. Now we look back at him and say, we are thankful for this guy for so much. The Labour Party in the past, what did the Tories say when they introduced the NHS? They're going to bankrupt the country, handouts for everyone, and now it's one of the most popular things in the whole country. And that's what I want to say. These people, you can probably tell you're on the right side of history if these people who call themselves capitalists call you all these names and smear you, because you're pushing back against their greed and the things they, the whole hope that they can rise into the ranks of the 1%, which is obviously given to us by them, so we turn against each other. You're never going to be rich. You're probably never going to pay the top tax bracket, so stop worrying about your taxes increasing, especially in the UK. Just focus on helping each other and vote for the people who see you as human beings, not as a tool to make money off, and especially not this entrepreneurial stuff, so you can fight against each other and crush each other, so maybe one of you might make it and become wealthy. So if you want to go away, the audience, if you don't know this stuff as much, please do, because once you understand it, it just becomes so black and white. Republicans, centrist Dems, corporate Dems, they're just for the wealthy, they're not for you. People like Bernie, Jeremy Corbyn, they're normal people fighting for you. They might not be perfect, no one really is. You might not agree with them on everything, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's just they're way better, and that they're going to fight for you because they're not bought by these same people. And that's what I want to leave people with. And please think of the UK, and especially if we lose, seriously, we are so screwed. I'm not exaggerating. We're literally going to become mini Trump land if Boris Johnson gets a Tory majority.
I feel that. Yeah. Can you plug your Twitter, your show, everything like that?
Okay, so because I got quite a unique name, I snagged the username for everything. So it's at the Kavernacle on both Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Kavernacle. So follow me on that if you want. I've just started the Facebook page because this is going to be on Facebook, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity. If you want to follow me on Reddit, where I post my videos, that's just u/TommyCahill1995. And yeah, when you're on those sites, just check out the other stuff I've got going on in the descriptions of my channel and everything. And yeah, I'd appreciate if you subscribe and help me out, because I've had to stop my channel because of my job. I'm trying to get back into it, but as we know with the YouTube algorithm, if you stop posting, it stops recommending it. So please go check out some of my videos the last couple of months. Some good stuff. And I've covered British politics a lot. New video going up tonight about Trumpism and the UK, so that should be a good one.
Absolutely. And where are your articles being published now?
So they're not being published anywhere specific, but if you just go on my WordPress blog, I normally just re-upload them there. So it's just the Kavernacle WordPress, type that in, or just go to my YouTube channel, and I got that all in the description, the extra stuff. So yeah, go check that out if you're interested in the stuff I write.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us again, Conor. You're freaking awesome. I'm so glad you joined us again.
Thanks, Sam. Can I tell you what I'm feeling bad about this? So what I said about Pete not being normal and stuff, I really do apologize for that. I feel really bad about it, and it was just a slip of the tongue, and I just want to say that because I don't want people to call me up later and say, you're a bigot, you hate gay people. And I think if you go through my history on my channel, you see some of the videos I made, like for example about the James Charles thing being driven by homophobia. I hope I've proved enough that I am a passionate fighter for gay rights, and this was just a genuine slip up in a moment of passionate ranting, which I shouldn't have said, and I don't know why I did, because I'm normally a lot more careful with my words. So I just want to say I apologise for saying that if anyone was offended, and we all make mistakes, and hopefully I've proved that this isn't representative of my actual views. And yeah, so I just wanted to clear that up, because I've been feeling bad about that since I said it.
Aw, no, you're awesome. I can say, as someone who live streams, sometimes I say shit and I'm like, oh my God, why?
Yeah.
Why? It's so easy to do, especially when you're passionate. So
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure my audience gets it. I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Thank you guys so much for watching. As usual, we are going to share this again at 9 p.m. So there's more people home from work and all that stuff. I do have an update. It's not like a super great one. I did not get a second interview with the job for Bernie's campaign. So I'm not happy about that. But I decided, instead of crying in the fetal position for like the next 6 months, I am going to Iowa for 5 weeks to help with our first primary. So I will be in Iowa to help with the caucus, and also be on the ground at the caucus so I can make sure no shit is happening, or at least record it if and when it does. So yeah, the next 5 weeks, I'm leaving January 1st, and I'll be there through the caucus, which is February 3rd. Please phone bank for Iowa and New Hampshire if you can. It's going to set the tone for the whole race. You guys know how that works. Whoever wins Iowa ends up typically winning the nom. So we got to go hard with that. And there is a GoFundMe set up for housing and food and travel and stuff that I have no idea how I'm paying for 5 weeks. But I'll deal. If I have to do sell plasma or something, I don't know. It's gonna happen, damn it. Bernie 2020. That's dedication. Well, I'm hoping that I'll get a job when I'm out there. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed. But again, thank you guys for watching, and thank you so much, Connor.
Yeah, no problem.
Frost for Thursday.
Yeah. Well, at least we hope for gridlock in Parliament, so there's no clear winner. It is what I'm hoping for at the very least. And if Corbyn won, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, and we will get this up later tonight. So thank you so much. Take care.